trying to demonstrate a lot of the science that was conducted over this past year. So this video starts with basically the last Congress we had, and then finishes all the way up to practically today. So these are some of the early guys from the Expedition 29 crew, and trying to show a little bit of the science that we do. Some of it is human-based science, trying to figure out how we can live and work in space for longer periods of time. We often don't put these kind of videos up there of human subjects getting their blood drawn, but both Mike and Satoshi were absolutely fine with this. We have had issues of people with eye problems on long-duration space flight, so that is also one of the investigations that are being conducted. Some of the Russian science, they also have a science program. I'm not able to talk to it a whole lot, but I'm sure some of the cosmonauts can fill you in on the details after this. And certainly, we do a lot of interesting human outreach. And as you can see, Satoshi can play baseball by himself. Although he doesn't look like he's too good of an outfielder. And that was in the JPM, the Japanese pressurized module. Recently, we got some really good cameras that have taken some great pictures, and that was Mike Fossum showing you how we do that from the cupola. I believe this was the launch of probably Expedition 30, which was probably Expedition 30 that had Dan Burbank, Anton Skaplarov, and Anatoly Yevgenishin when they got up there. They were actually part of Expedition 29. And as you can see in this video, the consistent theme currently of getting to and from the space station is using the Russian Soyuz rocket, which has really been a workhorse for the space station program, getting all of the international partners to the space station. So this was in TMA-03 Mike that launched Andrei Kuipers, Oleg Kornienko, and Don Pettit to the space station. That was in the ATV, the European module, and this is Robonaut. That's not Robonaut, that's Oleg. And some of the other science we do in the U.S. lab, this is an experiment called BCAT. I can answer questions about any of the science later, or maybe answer some of the questions, or some of the other people in the room can answer the science questions, because some of this stuff some other folks know about more than me. The Russians did a lot of spacewalks in this past year. This was moving the Strela crane. I think it was Oleg and Anton performed this EVA, moving it from the Piers docking compartment over to MRM-2. It's quite a challenging EVA, in my understanding, because it's such a large piece of hardware that two guys are trying to move. So on March 28th, the ATV, which is the European cargo ship, arrived at Eduardo Amaldi, and that carried 6,500 pounds of cargo to the International Space Station. So we have several ways of getting cargo up there now. The ATV, the Japanese HTV, of course the Progress, which has really been a workhorse for the space station, and a new U.S. vehicle I'll talk about later. Quite the wild ride home from orbit. The way I describe it is like going over Niagara Falls in a barrel while you're on fire. And it is one of the most exciting experiences of my life, coming home in the Soyuz. I tell people if I hated every part of the 6 months that I was up there, I'd do it all over again for the last 20 minutes. Another crew of Joe Akaba, Gennady Padalka, and Sergei Revin bring the crew back up to a crew of 6. So at times we only have 3 crew members on board. It makes some of the operations challenging. We have a goal on the U.S. operational segment of doing 35 hours of science a week, and we can't always do that, especially when we have a crew of 3. So having more people on board is critical. During this year, we were able to capture and berth the first SpaceX cargo vehicle. For those of you that aren't familiar, this was a new program where NASA basically gives seed money or funds a commercial company to do a specific task, in this case bring cargo to and from the space station without a lot of U.S. government oversight. So because the U.S. government, working with the U.S. government, is a large organization, sometimes things are more challenging. And in this case, we were able to just give them a set of requirements, and they were able to successfully build a vehicle and berth it to the International Space Station, and then also bring the cargo home, which was very impressive. Besides the United States, Russia, and China, this is the first. This is the fourth entity that has ever accomplished this feat, flying something to space and bringing it home. And it's something I think the folks at SpaceX should be very proud of. This is in the service module of the Russian segment. Again, some of the, this is a personal science that Don Pettit did. Again, U.S. laboratory with Robonaut and the Japanese experimentation module. This is a cargo, this is CIR, combustion integrated rack, where you can do combustion experiments to learn more about the combustion process on orbit. Again, some of the science I'm not familiar with. We have the cupola on board now. I'm sure a lot of people have seen that. Allows you to get a really interesting perspective on the Earth. This is using a fisheye lens out of the cupola. It kind of gives you sort of a perspective of what it would be like if you're in there. If you actually turn upside down and stand on the walls of the cupola, it's almost like you feel like you're in a glass bottom boat going right over the water. Got some new cameras on board, which gives us a really great new capability to get images from space that really capture the imagination of the folks on the ground, and we'll see some of those here. So I think it's great for public outreach. Certainly, like I said, with the Aurora pictures, there is some scientific license on some of these, but this is some pictures going over Colorado. This past summer, we had a bunch of fires there. I don't know what happened to the music there. If they could turn it up a little bit, that's good. Don Pettit, our native, or our scientific expert on the space station, just giving a quick tour of some of the segments that was going through the Russian FGB cargo block. And I think he shuts off the camera here and then goes back into the U.S. segment. But before that, looking at some of the physics type experiments we do with burning these flame balls in this combustion rack. This is going through node 2 of the space station into the U.S. laboratory module. It's really a fascinating place to live and work. Even in the middle of the night, when you're taking some of these blood and urine samples, you got to get up there and put them in the freezer, while you're half asleep, and it makes for an interesting video if you set the camera up ahead of time. And these are some of the pictures I was talking about, these time-lapse photographs that you can get now that we have these new cameras on board. Clearly, again, big disclaimer, a lot of artistic license here. Doesn't actually look like that, but it makes for a great picture. So obviously what you're looking at is stars in the sky, and then on the ground you'll see the city lights that are in a different orientation from the stars. It's just based on how the orientation of the camera is and the movement of the space station, against the ground and against the background of stars. Or I should say the movement of the Earth against the background of stars. So at some point, Don, Andre, and Oleg departed the space station. And with that, that was the end of Expedition 30. We actually had a first U.S. segment EVA in this year in a long time, changing a big electrical box to give us, we had some failures of an electrical component, and we had to get that back by doing an EVA, unscheduled EVA, to get improve our redundancy. Aki Oshidi did the spacewalk with Sonny Williams. Their launch wasn't showed here, but they later got on board the space station. Joe Akaba exercising. We now have a great suite of exercise equipment that causes our crew members to come back from the space station in better physical shape than when they left. Occasionally, people will have issues with bone loss, but as far as muscle and aerobic condition, just about everyone is better than when they launched on a 6-month flight. This is a change of command ceremony between Gennady and Sonny. This was Sonny's second long-duration flight, and they'll be up there for another month or so. Coming back, we hope, on actually not even a month, less than a month. November 20th, I think, is around when Sonny and Aki and Yuri Nolenchenko get home. So this was Joe's landing, and then the current crew that recently launched: Kevin Ford, Oleg Novitsky, and Yevgeny Turelkin, and they launched just a week or so before this conference. So these guys are the last guys launching into space in the past year. They actually launched from a different launch pad in Baikonur. This is the first time they're using this new launch pad. I don't know what the plan is for use in the future, but I'm assuming it will be used at certain times. It's a little further away than the traditional launch pad we use. It's like a 50-minute drive now from building 254, where you get suited up, but we're still getting suited up at the same location, and everything worked great launching from the new launch pad in Baikonur. Again, doesn't quite look that beautiful, but it does look beautiful for those of you who have seen the aurora from space. That's the end of the video presentation. I want to just talk a little bit about the future of the space station program.